We believe that this will be the standard for the Gen Z pet owner 5 years from now. It will be a no-brainer to have this kind of apparatus with the related technology because it's going to give you peace of mind. You're going to have a healthier pet that's happier, that you can bond more with. It's going to hopefully live longer. You're going to save money. You're going to save time. You're going to consolidate everything concerning your pet into one place, right? And so that kind of ecosystem is really what we're building. And
The Research Labs podcast by SundayPyjamas.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for reaching out to us. I really love the way you texted me. It was just three small points, and that was just perfect.
thank you.
I,
Good.
I learned a lot from that email.
Cool. Yeah, it's there are different strategies with outreach, and we got some very smart people in our team who come up. So I can't take credit for everything, but I'm the guy who tends to do most of the talking. Though we have some fantastic other people too that does a lot of panels and it always depends on the topic, right? If it's entrepreneurship, it tends to be me, but if it's like anything with veterinary care and anything medicinal, it tends to be our chief veterinary officer who is based in New York. And if it's like product, it might be our chief operating officer in Vietnam. But yeah, I mean, we got some good guys.
So first of all, Richard, thank you so much for building the company you're building right now. I reached out to a couple of my friends who actually own a pet, and they were overjoyed. I would say they understand how it feels when your pet is not well. Especially, I would like to talk about this one particular dog. His name is Whiskey, and he's an older dog. He's, I would say, towards the end of his life. He's owned by one of my very close friends, and so they don't live together because the dog lives with their parents, and my friend is out for college. So the doctor told them that he's not gonna make it. So my friend, he flew in just to see how he was, and guess what? Whiskey is fine now. And the doctors are surprised as to what really happened.
Mm.
And basically, when Whiskey was like a year old or very like a tiny pup,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
my friend Pranav and him have grown up together. So when I heard that story after our call, I would say I understand what that bond is. But
Mm.
then when you shared your story, I kind of understand why your company work. In my mind, I think it's because of that very strong bond that pet owners feel towards their pets. They want to take care of them. Could you share your journey of figuring out that this is something you want to do? Do you own a pet? Did you own pets in the past? Like how do you think it started?
Right, right. Well, thank you for that. Look, I think the human and pet bond, because you don't have to have a dog necessarily. It could be any other type of pet, a
Right.
guinea pig or a rabbit or a cat, or people have all sorts of pets today. Birds is another big sort of sub. It's there's a lot of bird owners out there, in particular across Asia Pacific, right? So we see that. And look, I think if you grow up with a pup, if you rescue a pup, it might be an even stronger bond because you have that sort of very much a fatherly or motherly kind of nurturing and caring for that pup that had been abandoned by somebody else. But nonetheless, whether you rescue one or if you get a fuller bred, right? At an early age, you're going to see the development of that pet and you're going to be part of that development and the fostering and the nurturing and seeing something grow from being in the paw of your hand to something that's depending on breed and type of pet, obviously, it's going to grow. So that bond will be very strong. And obviously it's very strong on the pet side too. So in terms of your friend who had whiskey, it could have been the fact that whiskey was depressed when your friend left for college, and that
Yeah.
depression was picked up as some other sort of possible disease, but it was more of a depression, maybe with another underlying disease. But because of the depression with an underlying disease, it kind of looked like it was a lot worse than what it was. As your friend came back and this two people came together again, obviously there was joy, and the pet, Whiskey the dog, probably felt, a whole lot better. So there is a lot of truth to that. I mean, we should also remember that there is a lot of human beings that don't have a better half, that don't have a family, right? The family might have drifted off, or might have died, and what they have is that dog or cat or parrot, or hedgehog or whatever it may be. And that's the buddy that sits and watches a movie with them, next to them. And people that don't have pets, they obviously laugh at these kind of things and say, come on, you can't be serious, right? But I think the truth is, yes, you can be very serious, and it can be very affectionate, and it can be a very serious relationship, right? And so that's that. I guess, coming back to your question, my background, I have a 10-year-old Maltese, or he is 9, pushing 10 in August. And so I have myself had that sort of fatherly. I picked him up, he was 3 months. He was not a rescue, though I fully endorse rescuing pets. I think, as much as we can, we should, and that should be the first thing that one looks at, because that's the noble thing and the right thing to do. And I picked him up at 3 months, and I obviously had him before I had my human boy. My human boy is 4 years old. And so I completely understand that relationship, being a pet parent, or a pet father, right? My wife is obviously the pet mother in this equation. And we treated Caesar, which is his name, as a fur baby. He was with us everywhere. We went to a restaurant, he came along, right? And we planned sort of our life a little bit around him as well, how we traveled and where we went to eat, because if he was not allowed to come, we didn't like to leave him alone at home, because he would bark into oblivion. So we didn't like that, and obviously he would get stressed, and anxiety and all that. So I can relate to the topic. When I decided to get into the space, I had basically left my previous life in media. I was 15 years in digital media. I was one of the, I guess, original gangsters in Southeast Asia and in North Asia, in terms of starting something that was, the first kind of editions of Web 1 digital media, right? So magazine going from static to from analog up to being digitalized and being on the World Wide Web. And so that was called Lifestyle Asia, or Lifestyle Hong Kong, because we started in Hong Kong and then that expanded across Asia. And 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 sort of towards the end of that, I sort of thought, what do I do next? And I looked at data, and data was, the big thing. And I liked the pet sector, being a pet parent, and I saw how incredibly analog it was, very similar to that of publishing, that I had sort of worked on. So it was very much around digital transformation. How can we, or I, and with a couple of other guys, the team, create a product that explains how the pet is feeling physically and emotionally, and how can we leverage data? And so it kind of ended up with, okay, we're going to need some type of wearable, like this is a Whoop strap, right, which I use. I got all of the various human ones, and then we created, which is this, which kind of sits around, obviously, the neck of the pet. And it has different kind of onboard sensors, and there is one main sensor on the back, which is a temperature gauge. But inside of the monitor, you have an array of non-intrusive sensors and components that pull out certain values, and then we can put these values in proprietary algorithms that feed out heart rate, pulse rate, respiration rate, obviously temperature, and we look at animal behaviors and all these different things. But the thinking back then was, can we create a health wearable for pets, because it wasn't anything around? And how can we explain health markers in a non-medicinal way? So if you're not a scientist, if you're not a vet, how do we explain it in a simplistic way? And then if there is a value that is, let's say, abnormal or out of range, how do we then prompt the user by sending a push notification to tell them about this problem without giving them a panic attack. And then we sort of said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could also tell them, give them a solution to that problem that we identified? And that's sort of where we bridge this contact to a service provider or a physical product that could combat that problem. So that was kind of what you know, and my motivation was, how can I understand my pet and bond even more with Caesar, which was my pet. So that was kind of, and of course I asked around and asked other pet owners, would this be something you would use? And there was an overwhelming feedback. Obviously, some skepticism where people said, "Can you even build this? Is it possible to build? How do you do it?" And so, but yeah, so that was kind of the background to the why, I guess. And our mission and vision is very much, how can we better inform pet owners so that they can make the right decision about what to do next for their pet, right? And this obviously comes from a health and longevity standpoint. So our idea is, we have a longevity program today because obviously that wasn't there when we started, but it's really about fostering um, a closer bond, but also ensuring that the pet lives a happier and more joyous life when they're on this planet. And then obviously we want to extend that back end. So if Whiskey, your buddy's, your buddy had one of the monitors and ran the program, which is in the application, there is daily chores that your friend could do to maximize that lifespan. And so that's what we focus on: health, longevity. I'm fascinated with longevity on the human side, and I do a lot of things myself. Try to stay very fit and healthy, and eat clean, and exercise every day, and sweat out all the anxiety and the bad things that we have in our body that we kind of store up. But yeah, that was a long answer.
So, you mentioned you have a background in digital media, and then your next idea was to build a hardware product essentially to collect all the data. And during the last conversation, you shared this one insight that when I asked, how do you see MyPetGo, you mentioned that we essentially are a platform, a data platform that help pet owners and veterinarians to do the best that is for the pet. And when you, I would say, described it as a data platform, that that was very interesting. And you kind of mentioned that the hardware is something that you have to build because there is nothing out there that you can just use off the shelf. Could you share like the thought process behind building not just a hardware product, but also the adjoining software systems uh, in the early days? Right now, you are in the longevity program, which is a iterative process after 4 years. But how did you make sense of this whole product and the platform, let's say in the first 3 to 6 months? What were the conversations like with the team and everyone?
Right. I mean, that's a great question, I think. So look, I think starting to get into the hardware space with very little knowledge, right? I mean, I had to kind of rewire myself and read up a lot and talk to a lot of people and take apart a lot of existing human health wearables and other wearables to try to understand what's going on, what's inside of these products. And I think, you know, hardware is hardware. If you take this monitor apart, what you'll realize is there is a lot of components that come from different semiconductors, right? And chip manufacturers. And anybody can buy these, and anybody can put them onto this green wafer board, which is what we call the PCB or PCBA board. And so there is nothing unique about the hardware. Quite often, it's really what makes it unique is how you use that hardware and how you connect it with middleware or firmware, and then finally with software. And often the magic happens on the software side. Of course, some magic happens on the firmware side too, because the firmware speaks between the hardware and often there is an application on your phone, right, which is your software. The hardware can be cloned and copied, right? And so that's nothing unique there. However, there is easily you can make a lot of mistakes in hardware, right? Everything from finding the right manufacturing partner who's going to manufacturing this, right? What we realized early on was everybody is middlemaning. What does it mean? Okay, there is a manufacturer who says, I'm an end-to-end manufacturer. I can do everything for you. The reality is he can't. Almost nobody can. I mean, there are some, Foxconn and the big boys. Obviously, they can if the money is right and the quantities are right, or the MOQs, as we say. The reality is they go and middleman out. So they go and they talk to their peers that are specializing in another area. Now the problem is I'm talking to this one manufacturer and I tell him how I want things to be done. Then he goes and tells these other guys. The possibility of things being lost in translation down the chain is enormous, right? And this happens. So it's a tricky one. You know, Everybody looks at manufacturing these type of products in mainland China predominantly, right? I mean, we're seeing more and more things happening in India, Vietnam, other parts of Southeast Asia, Taiwan, obviously, but eh, but predominantly it's mainland China, and so you have a language barrier, you have a cultural barrier unless you're mainland Chinese yourself and you fully understand. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. We started this during the pandemic, so we had no opportunity to travel to the manufacturer to sit down around the table and say, hey, this thing should go there. This is not the right shade of the color. We want to have this shade. And, so you did things over a screen and over emails. And so you have an additional layer of things that could possibly get lost in translation. So I think that was the hardest one for myself and the team. I think the the idea when we started it was let's do a health and GPS tracker. Okay. So the GPS would kind of tell you the whereabouts of the pet, right? And that's what we built essentially. But then we kind of pivoted that to health and wellness. And then we said, there's other people doing wellness. So let's take that out. Let's add longevity. So that's health and longevity. So that's, that has been a 4-year process where there's been pivots that have changed the direction. Now, the latter stuff that I'm talking about, they're very much on the software side. So that's the application itself, the algorithms, how the firmware using are picking up data points from the hardware and then using them in different ways to then report certain data metrics inside of the app. And so the hardest part was getting the hardware right from the start and finding the right people. Today I could do it and it would be so much easier because I have 4 years of knowledge and 4 years of trial and error in certain areas, and my network is just infinitely different than what it was before, right? So I know who to go to now for manufacturing. I know where to source colors. I know a lot of things I didn't know before. So it would certainly be easier. But and then you come down to algorithms, and it's like, a lot of the work that we do is algorithmic, and we're using AI models, right? So it's like these values go into AI models, the AI models then feed out these particular values. And the more data you have, the better the models, you use machine learning models and you train them and they get smarter, they get better. So it's really a chicken and egg problem, right? You can't really build all of this unless you have tons of users. How do you get the users if you don't have the product that you're building, right? So it's like, it's a
Right.
tricky one, but yeah, I think we've come a pretty long way, and it's been hard, but it's tough to do
Yeah.
everything, I guess.
This makes me think when you are trying to place the first order, you mentioned that if you have a bigger order, a lot of manufacturers would be interested to work with you
Sure.
guys. So in the beginning, right, you don't have a big order. You have a small order because you're just getting started, which is fine. How did you guys gauge how many to order in the first batch, for example? Did you do some kind of market testing? Was there like how did that work?
I mean, it's a good question, right? So I think what some of these types of tech products do is that they run a Kickstarter or they run an Indiegogo or they do something
Right.
before, and that gives them an idea possibly of what to do. We we had set up a Kickstarter campaign. We were ready to go. This was like perfect. And then one
Right.
day before we were about to launch that campaign, and we had collected leads and we had agencies that had collected leads. Kickstarter basically said, "Look, you're a medical product. We don't do medical products." And we said, "We're not a medical product." And it was the whole COVID thing, and they were scared, and it was all these different things. So they said, "Sorry, you just can't." So we then had to shift it to Indiegogo, but we had collected this list of leads that knew it was a Kickstarter campaign coming, right? And all of a sudden you're telling them, sorry, but it's going to be at a different date and it's going to be an Indiegogo, right? So, out of I can't remember how many leads we had picked up, but it was in the thousands, right? That had prepaid $1 to be able to, join the campaign. And I can't remember what we ended up selling 100 monitors or something like that on Indiegogo when we had to swap it. And so for us, it was harder because we didn't have that much to gauge with. If you're if you sell 10,000, you make on one of those platforms, you make maybe 10,000, or you make maybe twice that because there's going to be more sales coming. So we decided on 7,000. I think initially we wanted to do 10, but we ended up doing 7. I don't know where the number came from. I think it was tied down to I believe it was we were haggling with the manufacturer that we ended up using, and of course they wanted as many as possible, and we wanted something that that wasn't too high, wasn't too low. If you go to a Chinese contract manufacturer, they tend to want you to have 10 or 15 or 20, or they want to have tens of thousands, right? But with that said, there are other ones that are more entrepreneurial, that are younger and willing to take smaller quantities, if to show their ambition, so that you stay with them, right? So, but yeah, that was our number. It wasn't a very data driven number. It was just a number.
And how crucial do you think this first step is to gauge the market demand with the best of your ability, and to make sure that you are not overspending, I would say, because I presume that's a bigger challenge for a small startup. Not underspending, you can always get more of them. If someone else is trying to do a hardware product right now and they have an MVP, how crucial do you think this first step would be from
I
what you
mean,
know?
look, yeah, I mean, look, I met a company recently that had done their own crowdfunding campaign, and so I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was around 1,000
Right,
hardware devices, and they had used their own ways of email lists and their own marketing and all of that. So you don't need Indiegogo and Kickstarter. Honestly, you can do it on your own. And but then recently they came and asked me, hey, how this manufacturer wants us to do 10,000, and I know that manufacturer, and I said,
right,
okay, well, do you want to do 10,000? They said, no, it's way too much for us. So so I think it's a great way to gauge kind of what you can do. And I think you can also show maybe, and again, this comes down to most contract manufacturers want to get paid everything before they push that button, right? I mean, almost
right,
everything. They might have 20% or 30% on delivering all the monitors, but certainly buying components upfront, buying materials upfront, that's the plastics, the resin, all the stuff, right? They're gonna need to make injection molding templates. You're gonna have to pay that. I paid 50,000 US dollars for mine, right? But that's something you can keep.
right,
Uh, so it is a big cost, and it depends on your unit economics, right? If it's
right,
a lot more affordable to make 20,000 instead of 10, then maybe you do that. However, I think it comes down to your components. They tend to be the expensive ones if you do hardware, right? And they are from semiconductors. And today the market is much better. When I started this, it was a very troubled industry with massive shortage. right? So during the
Right.
pandemic, there was this issue with supply chain on the one hand, but then there was the issue with closing of factories. So there wasn't enough chips to go around for everybody that needed them. So it was this, okay, you want these components? It's a 54-week waiting list. I said, what? 54 weeks? So you had to do this spot buying, which is where you buy, and we basically took a gamble. We bought a couple of things and put it together, and it kind of worked out. But needless to say, there were a lot of there's been a lot of headache there too. So yeah,
And do you guys sell the hardware products online via e-commerce store or
yeah. I mean, you can buy them on our website,
right,
and and that's mypetgo.com, and we can ship anywhere in the world, and that's direct to consumer, right? But then we work with B2B partners, and we do kind of deals with them, and they tend to bundle the monitors with maybe their pet insurance. So let's say their pet insurance. So it's like you get these health and longevity wearable, and you
right,
get this health plan from us, and that comes in a package. And that's how they differentiate. And then we help to white label this for them, and it looks like it's their longevity play, and so on and so forth, which helps that partner
right,
with reducing claims, improving retention, and helping as a lead generation instrument for them, right?
right,
And so, but it could also be, other pet tech companies, pet retail companies, pet longevity companies that are selling maybe longevity supplements, and you know you subscribe to the supplements, you get a wearable, and you can track kind of how activity levels go up and all of these different things. So there's a lot of ways to do it. We are more B2B to C than we are direct to consumer. That's not a push for us. With that said, that could of
right,
course change one day. Who knows? We are toying with the idea that maybe we should experiment more. There is a generation two that is being built now that is smaller and lighter and has a better battery life, and we're actually not using semiconductors. We're building our own boards and our own components.
right.
So it's more what the Whoop guys or the Aura guys would do, and we're kind of doing the same thing. So we're miniaturizing everything so we can bring down the size, bring down the weight,
Right.
increase, the power reserve so that we don't drain
Right.
the battery in the same way.
That makes me think how do you build a team who can build products like that? What is the thought process, the approach, the culture behind building a team that can not just build the hardware, the design side of things, but also the software platform that you guys are building?
It's different types of people doing different things, obviously, and you don't use the same people. So I would say the biggest challenge with what we've done is that you need very specialized people for every different part of the venture, right? How it comes together. So you might have a designer who's really good on app design, and then not so good at web, and can't really do any industrial design. I mean, industrial design for casing is completely, it's a very specialized thing,
And
right?
different
So
field of study, yeah.
yeah. So we've had, I mean, to get this off ground, we have probably had over 100 hands, 100 different hands touching the project, right? From full-time staff to contracted staff to temporary staff to teams that have been outsourced to that are specialized in a particular area. It's just the way it is, right? So that's been hard, and it's hard until today because now we're doing the same thing over and over again with, or doing it with a generation two, and with that, it's a new app, it's a you know new design of web. Yeah, but at least we know what to expect.
When your product is changing so many hands, how do you guys make sure that it's evolving the way you have initially envisioned, or does it kind of change as it change hands as well as new ideas come in?
There is a natural evolution, so it is evolving simply because it's there is more ideas infused when you bring in more people, but it's also a natural progression of what we want to do as a company. And I think, look, longevity was something that, I mean, longevity holistically, right? The idea was always with this to be able to inform the pet owner when something was wrong. But I think now we've taken a different approach to longevity where we're being super proactive. There is a program. You follow the program, you will by default have a healthier pet that's going to live a better life, better quality life, I should say. And this pet should be able to extend that back end of life, right? So, increased lifespan. But but yeah, I mean it has been evolving. We have pivoted, so that has also in a way made I mean we made radical changes, right? From turning off a GPS that sits inside, which was the most important, and sorry, not most important, but well, at the time I guess, but it was the most expensive piece of the equation. And the reason why we turned it over was draining battery in a way where it was just not sustainable. It was very hard to scale. It was supposed to work across all of these different countries, but infrastructure, as we know, looks very different from country to country. Telecom infrastructure looks even more different, and so it just didn't work in certain areas where it should work, right? So it came down to, people saying, yeah, this thing doesn't work. And it was like, well, it was the telecom guys that kind of couldn't get it to work because there was no signal. So it's not the
Right.
same roaming SIM technology that you have in your mobile phone where you can turn it on and it kind of works everywhere, right? It might be very expensive, but it works, right? With these kind of things, it's a different eSIM or a different physical SIM, and it can, they just simply don't work because you're paying so little per month, right? And the end user is not going to pay, $1,000 roaming fee, right? So it was just really hard to scale it. And then we felt it was a bit yesteryear. There's a lot of people doing that GPS tracking, and some are doing it really well. So I think having people involved is good to a degree.
Right.
If you have too many people involved that are all throwing ideas at you, you can get very confused. So you have to kind of go with a couple of things and make those changes and allow for that natural progress. But if you listen to everybody and everybody want to
Right.
have a say, it can get super messy, right?
And I think you just raised a round, so congratulations on that. Apart from that, you mentioned that you had to talk to all the manufacturing folks back in China. You had to obviously talk to all the agencies in the beginning to launch the Indiegogo and the Kickstarter campaign. You all are also raising funds, and you also have to talk to your team so that hundreds of hands, as you rightly mentioned, that makes me think that it's a very different kind of communication with each of them, and you have to constantly keep on reprioritizing as to what is important for this week. Okay, I can talk to investor today. I have to cancel my meeting with the team tomorrow. So how would you describe your management style? How do you go about managing what is important, what is urgent? How do you go about scheduling your time per week? Any tools, any tool recommendations you might have for someone who are trying to learn from, how you have went about MyPetGo?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So the management style is probably quite messy if you ask my team. I mean, it's better you ask the people that work with me and for me than asking me. But I guess it's changing every week, right? Like the priority right now is finishing up the latest longevity application, and that will then change the whole app, and I think it's going to be good for basically everything that we're doing. But then something else becomes super urgent, and I might have to tell the guys, hey, look, we have this other thing, we just got to do it. And then that takes first spot, and we just got to down prioritize this. So it's been very fluid for us.
Right,
And of course, you know, for some people they can't take that pressure and that constant change, and those people
right,
tend to drop off, and they're not right for that high pressure environment, right? It's very, very high pressure. It's a lot of changes. We're a 4-year-old company, and but we're still very much a startup in the sense that things are moving super fast, and things are changing, on the day. And so that doesn't suit everybody. But I think now we have a very good team. We have super low churn rate. No one is leaving us, and we're adding on more people. I think, we're trying to find these. individuals that are what I like to call hidden talent, right? They're they're hidden talent in that others might not have discovered them yet, right? And so they're partly shapeable and moldable, but
Right.
if they fit that mentality of high stress, which you can never know when you interview somebody, but then I usually go with my gut. Can I work with this person? Will this person deliver?
Right.
And so I think that the management style is quite loose, but we try to focus on the most important thing at the moment. And some people are focused on one thing and others are focused on another thing. But I think as a collective, it's like they all lead to this one thing that we're focused on. And as I said, right now it's the
Right.
longevity app. So I think that's the management style. And um, and 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 that may change one day when we grow and we're bigger and we got a bigger organization, but at the moment that's the way we kind of roll. And I think, if you're a Tesla, I think Tesla operates maybe in a similar way. We're they're certainly not a startup, but I think there is that day one mentality still, and they're making a lot of quick changes, and there is one very central thing that they're working towards, right? Maybe a new model, and that is really what they focus on, and everybody is involved with Musk and the whole gang, right?
You mentioned the longevity app that you guys are building, and you said it kind of impacts everything you guys are doing. Is that like a strategic perspective you had to build to kind of conclude that if we build this application, it will have a multivariant impact on various departments of the business overall? Like
Yeah.
how would you define how important is strategy in what you're doing, and how do you think about strategy?
Yeah, good question. So look, I think that is very much a strategic move where we say, look, nobody else has anything remotely similar for a pet owner, where these daily chores across mobility and activity, across nutrition and hygiene, and across preventative care and health screenings, right? And we have those three pillars that we do. And if you conduct these chores in a timely way, you're going to get rewarded. So you get points for doing them. These points can be offset for products and services in the ecosystem side because we have this platform play, right? And it's perfect for white labeling and for partners because they can really look at their own churn rate and look at it as a lead generation tool and rewarding their own people. So if you're an insurance company, you say, look, you follow all these things in a timely way, take the deworming tablets, don't overfeed, massive pet obesity problem in the US market, for instance, right? Actually globally, right? Which then leads to a lot of other issues, right? Exercise your pet the right amount. Obviously, with the monitor, we share all the step count and everything back, so it's very transparent. You know, when there are health alerts, do engage with those and do the right next thing. If there's an issue, talk to a televet, and you follow. It's not rocket science really, but it is a program. We spent a lot of time getting the dynamics right, and so that is our differentiator. It's our way of going in and offering a complete pet care solution, pet care ecosystem for all these other pet companies, right? And they say, wow, that's amazing. I thought of building something, but this complete and with all the various parts. This is amazing. So we
Right.
are a tech enabler in that way, and and I think
Right.
that strategy is fundamental to what we're doing and what we want to do moving forward. It is what really sets us apart and makes us different. Uh,
Right.
coupled with the fact that we look at health markers. Other, as I said, they look at GPS tracking and stuff, and that's great.
Right.
But we're very different. So strategy for me is, what will a standard look like in 5 years from now? Like, so I think everybody is very focused on the Gen Z pet owner at the moment, right? So you're in the pet space, you're selling
Right.
food, you're selling pet care, it doesn't matter. Like, you're focused on Gen Z because that will become the largest group of pet owners, and they are the ones that are spending anywhere from $250 to $1,000 a month on their pet, right? They don't want to have human kids, they
Right.
want to have pets. right? And so
Right.
that's their kids. And so that's the owners you want to go after. These guys are data driven. They do everything on their smartphone, right? Everything happens in this on the smartphone. Work, consuming content, listening to music, obviously, paying bills, you know, whatever it is, right? Everything is there. So to be able to do everything concerning your pet's life on the mobile phone, with
Right.
the flick of a finger, looking at data driven reports, updates, health metrics, storing your insurance documents, having a program that tells you what to do is, I'm not saying it's the lazy pet owners' way of conducting, the job of being an obedient pet parent, but it certainly is an efficient way and a smart way because you will never forget to give that deworming tablet. You will never forget to feed on time, walk on time, taking the annual vaccination, going for dental scaling, right? A lot of pet owners don't know. You should go and clean the teeth of your pet twice a year, like a human goes to the dentist, right? And if you don't do this, you'll end up in a situation where your dog is having tons of issues with gums and teeth and infections and pain. They walk around with pain. I mean, they're very good at hiding emotions. So yeah, for us, it's yeah, that's the thing.
And how do you communicate the product, the vision, and the progress with your investors? How, like we talked about the team and the manufacturers and the customers, but that there is like investors are also a crucial part of this whole process and the journey. How what mental models or what is your style to deal with them and to get them
Yeah.
on
So
board?
look,
Because this what you're talking about is ambitious, so it can only can get enabled if also the investors are on board with the vision. So how does that work out?
yeah. So look, good question. What we're selling investors is essentially that everything that happens concerning the pet's health, let's say canine dogs now, because we're not doing cats at the moment or any other pets for that matter. So dog specific, canine specific. Everything concerning the health for that pet, from the first kind of insights that something may be wrong, right? All the way down to you actually ending up at the clinic or the hospital. Like everything between the first insight all the way down to that the decision is you actually have to go down, we'll take care of that whole journey. And that's what we're doing. So, you know, it's everything from self assessment where you basically fill in a lot of information and it helps us to assess the situation and we can give recommendations on that. That mixed with sensor data coming from this, that mixed with neural image recognition technology where you can take a picture of the teeth, the eyes, the skin, or the stool, right? We can tell you a lot of things with those images as well. So if you combine those three, you have the holy trinity of triaging, and we can give you the insights to the status quo of your pet, right? Um, we'll give you, not only insights to how they're doing, but what you can do in order to prevent or in order to, solve the issue that we have discovered, right? Before and we don't necessarily prevent something that's already there, but we can prevent it from becoming a bigger issue down the road by giving you these next step recommendations on what you should be doing. And so that whole journey, nobody owns today. We want to own that journey. And that's what we're selling. We're saying, look, we believe that this will be the standard for the Gen Z pet owner 5 years from now. It will be a no brainer to have this kind of apparatus with the related technology because it's going to give you peace of mind. It's going
Right.
to you're going to have a healthier pet that's happier, that you can bond more with. It's going to hopefully live longer, right? You're going to save money. You're going to save time. You're going to consolidate everything concerning your pet into one place, right? And so that kind of ecosystem is really what we're building. And the reason why it's taken a very long time is that it's a big thing to build, right? And it's not something that you just sort of, whip up in a couple of months with a couple of guys sitting in the garage eating pizza and drinking Coca-Cola. It's a bit more complex than that. And then
Right.
there's been pivots to it, right? So I think for us right now, really pushing into longevity, and we feel that longevity will be powered by one thing mainly, which is artificial intelligence. So for us, everything is AI and its longevity. And we're looking at acquiring new companies around MyPetGo that are synergistic and kind of building around MyPetGo with these companies or on top of MyPetGo, where we feel that together it becomes even more powerful and we can really own that journey that I explained earlier. So that's what we're selling, and with that, sky's the limit. Is it a big trade sales to a strategic? Is it a listing on a stock market as the markets recover? Will there be a massive bump if Trump comes into power? Who knows, right? And but something will happen in the next 2 to 4 years. We're quite confident, and we will continue to raise money, right? So now we raise some more money. That's a stepping stone for a larger raise, where we're kind of now thinking, should we start to acquire, invest, and continue to build? And that's kind of the model that we want to do. We can't do everything ourselves. We're not the best at everything ourselves, so we need to align ourselves with other great innovators and entrepreneurs that have you know great synergistic companies that where we add value to theirs, they add value to ours, and collectively we are much more interesting as a group of companies.
That sounds fascinating. I see how you are able to raise funds. I can see it now.
Now, okay, well, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and it's the same for everybody. Some people are very good at it, but I think it's always a challenge, right? To raise funds. Now the market is better. I mean, we started this during the worst possible time, right? 2023 was a horrendous year for raising capital. um I think 22 was not easy, and the pandemic, people were panicking there for a while. So to those entrepreneurs listening, it will get better and easier.
Right. So the first question was that, the vision that you are sharing and the confidence that you have with the product and the partnerships you mentioned that you have built over the years. In my mind, it's a result of the culture that you and your team have been able to build right from day zero. These things just don't happen, I would say, easily. There needs to have a there has to be a very consistent intentional effort to make things a very specific way to be able to get where my pet go is today, right? So, according to you, what do you think are those conscious efforts that you guys put into building the culture inside the team right from day one? That has been able to create so much value for the customers, for the team, for the investors, for everyone.
Well, I guess a never give up, never give in mentality, to a degree. I mean, and of course we've had some turnover in terms of staff, and we had to say goodbye to a bunch of people. That's of course never nice, but it's sometimes needed to push forward in somewhat of a different direction. I think the ones, as I said earlier, that are with the team today, we're very aligned and focused, and we sometimes don't need to talk too much because we know what we need to work on and we know what the end goal is. And I think having that alignment is paramount, right? If you don't have that alignment, and working towards a common goal, and having the need to talk all the time, and there is no trust between the people, then you have a big problem, right? Then you're just talking, you're never executing. And we've seen this a lot, right? I sold my previous company to a big German publishing group, and there was a lot of talking when I got
Right.
involved in the management there. A lot of meetings, a lot of big, lofty ambitions, and a lot of ideas, but very little execution, right? And so it was almost creating reports for the sake of creating reports for the sake of creating reports, and then talk about it, and then talk about the same stuff over and over again. It was like, and all the managers and all the people are like, why are we doing all this stuff? We could actually make the company more money and actually do things instead of sitting and just talking. But that's how it is sometimes. Some companies are like that. And I guess that was a very big company with 15,000 staff. And there needs to maybe be a different structure, and that's fine. But I think there was too much of it, right? So we try to be fluid. We try to be fast. People get along. We have our issues, of course, like everybody else, every now and then, but very little. And we're being respectful to one another, and the fact that we're still standing with the issues that we've had must be supernatural, right? In some way. So, there is certainly, I believe in my God, right? But I don't know about the other guys. They probably believe in a different God. But there certainly is some supernatural force that has blessed us as a collective and as a team to push forward with this mission and vision. And I think ultimately, because we're trying to do a good thing here, where we're helping both humans and animals, specifically dogs now. But the ambition is, of course, to kind of spin this up to horses, cats, and other animals down the road. And yeah, so there's a feel good factor to it. And I think that mission and vision that we have kind of gets people aligned. I think nobody works for the company only for the money. I think people actually like dogs and they want a
Like
better world for dogs. So I think
love,
that helps a lot, right?
love dogs. People actually love dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I love dogs.
And yeah, same here. Yeah. And usually they tend to love you back if you're kind to them. So
That's right. That's right. They're very, very loyal. And I can leave to go to my car and pick something up. I'm back in 10 seconds, right? My dog will greet me the same way he would greet me if I'm away for a full day, right? They don't really have a sense of time, and so it's quite funny actually.
well, I would say yeah, that was our time. If you have do you have any questions?
Not really. I thought you had very good questions. That was well prepared, and it's always interesting because sometimes it feels like when you do these that the questions are just the other person just spitballing, right? So and that's fine too. Like all podcasts have a different format. No, but it was fun. I mean, tell me a bit about, what is it that you're trying to achieve with the podcast, and what's the direction that you want to go into, if that's going to change in any shape or form.
So the reason we started the podcast, the why of the podcast, is that, for example, all the things that we talked about is in your head right now, if you know what I'm saying,
Sure.
and you have to go to all these universities to get access to the brains of people. You are not really going to a building to get information and knowledge. You are talking to these professors, lecturers, scientists, researchers to learn from them. That's the core idea. Whereas when I see the marketing campaigns of all the colleges, they are showing the baseball grounds and they are showing the facilities and the buildings. Whereas in my mind, you learn from other minds, from other people who have done it before. And I would say I have been to the US. I have been to a lot of colleges in the US, UT Dallas, NYU. My friends study there, so I was just there for like a visit. I met the researchers there, and after talking to them, I felt that I am one of those lucky, privileged guys to have made it so far, to even spend 30 minutes with these folks. And what they know needs to be out there somewhere so that anyone can
Right.
kind of access their brains. But they are not interested in talking, they are just interested in doing the work because that's what they love doing. And I have had so many conversations like that, where after the conversation I feel great that I was able to have that, but then also sad that nobody else can kind of have that. Not because these people are, they don't want to do it, but there is no such platform where all these minds can kind of collaborate and put it out there for free. So that
Right.
was like the core idea, and the reason we named it research labs, because we did not want to stick to like a particular field. If there is something technical, something interesting that can
Yeah,
benefit humanity as a whole, yeah, we want to talk to that person.
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's great. There is a lot of people that are
Like,
like, I think when you think about education broadly, right? Who educates the kids today? It's the government, right? Usually. And the question is, with the governments today, do you really want the government to educate your child for 15 years, or whatever it is, 10 years, 12 years, infusing their ideology? And they spend more time with your kid than you do yourself, right? You have an hour at dinner or two, and then some activities on the weekends, right? And so I think, similar to university, which is obviously private in many regards, not always, but private. there's a different curriculum, obviously, but I think what we will see over the next few decades is that there's going to be more home learning where young
Right.
parents say, I'm not sure I want this institution or this government to tell my child about all these crazy stuff that's going on in the world and infusing this belief on this or that. But I think in a similar way, there's going to be young adults that are going to say, I'm not sure about that university spending $250,000. Like, so there's going to be a lot of alternatives, learning
Right.
from podcasts, learning from self-improvement books, learning from online courses. There's going to be, different things where you can kind of piece together something that might be more beneficial for you as an individual than that MBA from Stanford or whatever. Like, I have nothing against Stanford, but
Yeah.
I'm just giving an example. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen in that field, from all the way from the young age to the old age. But look, I dig what you're doing. I think it's great.